So this will be welcome news, I think, for most federal employees. Politico is reporting that all of the proposed benefits cuts that have been batted back and forth in the House and Senate inside of the one big beautiful bill over the last couple of months have been dropped in the latest copy of the legislative text. In fact, there are only three items remaining from the governmental affairs provisions. One of those is FEHB improvements. That's the proposal that would add audits and accountability to the federal employees health benefits program to ensure that only qualified dependents are included in the program. That's the gist of it. Um, another item is the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee and appropriation for the Office of Management and Budget. I'm not even going to cover what those two are, they're boring. But the key point for federal employees to know is that all of the other provisions have been eliminated, as I said. So, what are those? One of them is the at-will employment option and higher contribution rates to FERS. That's the Federal Employees Retirement System. And that it came out of both the House and the Senate in various forms. It kind of included a combination of those two at different times, but basically it would have required federal employees to contribute more of their annual salaries towards their retirement for ultimately became for newly hired federal employees. And also there was an at-will employment option attached to it at one point. Again, for newly hired federal employees, they could opt to be at will, and that would be in exchange for a lower contribution rate to FERS. If they opted to keep their civil service protections, they had to contribute more to FERS. MSPB filing fee also been dropped. That would have imposed a $350 fee to file claims or appeals with the Merit Systems Protection Board, and the fee would be refundable for successful appeals. Another was the fee for federal employees' pay deductions. This came out of the Senate. That proposal would impose a 10% fee to cover administrative costs for optional payroll deductions for certain tax-exempt organizations, namely unions. And the reason the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs was putting that forth is they noted that the government incurs costs for those payroll deduction services, and they believe that the government should at least break even on recouping those costs. Bonuses for cost cutters, that was another proposal that was basically taking past legislation that Senator Rand Paul had proposed separately at different times, putting it into the reconciliation bill, the one big beautiful bill, and it would pay bonuses to federal employees who reported wasteful spending, typically that you see at the end of a fiscal year, the use it or lose it spending that tends to come up. It was targeting that. Charging unions for the use of federal resources, this targeted the use of official time, and unions would have been required to reimburse the government for official time and for the use of federal resources. Rescinding Postal Service EV, electric vehicle funds. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, about $1 billion was earmarked to go toward buying electric vehicles for the Postal Service and the accompanying infrastructure for those. It would have rescinded that and require the Postal Service to sell any unused infrastructure or electric vehicles. Elimination of the FERS annuity supplement in its last known form. That's something that would have kicked in January 1st, 2028, as I recall, but that's been dropped as well. And also the proposal to change from high 3 to high 5, that is no longer in this draft legislation. So again, that's basically all of them. Um, and this will be, as I said, I think welcome news for most federal employees. The legislative process is complex. And I've been saying all along when these first started getting floated in the House a couple of months ago, I think it was back in April, don't panic over this. There's a long way to go. Some of these proposals date back decades. I know the high 3 to high 5 proposal, that dates back to the 2000s that I know of, and I think maybe even predates that. But um, we saw them change a lot along the way to get to this point, and now, again, they appear to have been dropped entirely. But while this is good news for most of you, I think I would caution you that it's still subject to change. Politico, for instance, in its report said that these could come up again as the bill continues to go through the legislative process and be introduced as amendments. These proposals could reappear and or be modified. The reality is we're not going to have final answers until the bill becomes law. But for those of you who are concerned about this, it's certainly a step in the right direction towards what you were likely hoping, that these would be removed. So that's where things stand currently. Um, Again, still subject to change, but they have been dropped, as Politico reported from the latest draft of the reconciliation bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Also visit the fedsmith.com website because we will continue to provide updates as they become available. Have a good day, everyone.